but it is not sufficient to apply to the mind even such an important affirmation therapy as I have just suggested, unless throughout the day you also base your actions and attitudes upon fundamental principles of happier living. One of the most simple and basic of such principles is that of human love and goodwill. It is amazing what happiness a sincere expression of compassion and tenderness will induce. My friend Dr. Samuel Shoemaker once wrote a moving story about a mutual friend. Ralston Young is famous as Red Cap number 42 in the Grand Central Station in New York. He carries bags for a living, but his real job is living the spirit of Christ as Red Cap in one of the world's greatest railway stations. As he carries a man's suitcase, he tries to share a little Christian fellowship with him. He carefully watches a customer to see if there is any way in which he can give him more courage and hope. He is very skillful in the way he goes about it too. One day, for example, he was asked to take a little old lady to her train. She was in a wheelchair, so he took her down on the elevator. As he wheeled her into the elevator, he noticed that there were tears in her eyes. Ralston Young stood there as the elevator descended, closed his eyes, and asked the Lord how he could help her, and the Lord gave him an idea. As he wheeled her off the elevator, he said with a smile, "Ma'am, if you don't mind my saying so, that is a mighty pretty hat you are wearing." She looked up at him and said, "Thank you. And I might add," he said, "that sure is a pretty dress you have on. I like it so much." Being a woman, this appealed to her, and despite the fact that she was not feeling well, she brightened up and asked, "Why in the world did you say those nice things to me? It is very thoughtful of you." "Well," he said, "saw how unhappy you were, saw that you were crying, and I just asked the Lord how I could help you." The Lord said, "Speak to her about her hat." The mention of the dress, he added, was my own idea. Ralston Young and the Lord together knew how to get a woman's mind off her troubles. "Don't you feel well?" he then asked. "No," she replied. "I am constantly in pain. I am never free from it. Sometimes I think I can stand it." "Do you, by any chance, know what it means to be in pain all the time?" Ralston had an answer. "Yes, ma'am, I do, for I lost an eye, and it hurt like a hot iron day and night." "But," she said, "you seem to be happy now. How did you accomplish it?" By this time he had her in her seat in the train, and he said, "Just by prayer, ma'am, just by prayer." Softly she asked, "Does prayer, just prayer, take your pain away?" "Well," answered Ralston, "perhaps it isn't always take it away. I can say that it does, but it always helps to overcome it, so it isn't seem like it hurts so much. Just keep on praying, ma'am, and I'll pray for you too." Her tears were dried now, and she looked up at him with a lovely smile, took him by the hand, and said, "You've done me so much good." A year passed, and one night in Grand Central Station Ralston Young was paged to come to the information booth. A young woman was there who said, "I bring you message from the dead. Before she died my mother told me to find you, and to tell you how much you helped her last year, when you took her to the train in her wheelchair. She will always remember you, even in eternity. She will remember you, for you were so kind and loving and understanding." Then the young woman burst into tears and sobbed in her grief. Ralston stood quietly watching her. Then he said, "Don't cry, missy, don't cry. You shouldn't cry. Give a prayer of thanksgiving." Surprised, the girl said, "Why should I give a prayer of thanksgiving?" "Because," said Ralston, "many people have become orphans much younger than you. You had your mother for a long, long time, and besides you still have her. You will see her again. She's near to you now, and she always will be near to you. Maybe," he said, "she is right with the smooth two of us, as we talk." The sobs ended and the tears dried. Ralston's kindness had the same effect on the daughter as it had had on the mother. In this huge station, with thousands of people passing by, the two of them felt the presence of one who inspired this wonderful Red Cap to go around this way spreading love. "Where love is," said Tolstoy, "God is, and, we might add, where God and love are, there is happiness." So a practical principle in creating happiness is to practice love. A genuinely happy man is a friend of mine, H.C. Matten, who, with his equally happy wife, Mary, travels throughout the country in the course of his work. Mr. Matten carries a unique business card on the reverse side, of which is stated the philosophy which has brought happiness to him, and his wife, and to hundreds of others who have been so fortunate as to feel the impact of their personalities. The card reads as follows: "The way to happiness. Keep your heart free from hate, your mind from worry. Live simply, expect little, give much. Fill your life with love. Scatter sunshine. Forget self, think of others. Do as you would be done by." Try this for a week and you will be surprised. As you read these words you may say, "There is nothing new in that. Indeed, there is something new in it, if you have never tried it. When you start to practice it, you will find it the newest, freshest, most astonishing method of happy and successful living you have ever used. What is the value of having known these principles all your life, if you have never made use of them? Such inefficiency in living is tragic. For a man to have lived in poverty, when all the time right on his doorstep is gold, indicates an unintelligent approach to life. This simple philosophy is the way to happiness. Practice these principles for just 1 week, as Mr. Matten suggests, and if it has not brought you the beginnings of real happiness, then your unhappiness is very deep-seated indeed. Of course, in order to give power to these principles of happiness, and make them work, it is necessary to support them with a dynamic quality of mind. You are not likely to secure effective results even with spiritual principles without spiritual power. When one experiences a dynamic spiritual change inwardly, success with happiness-producing ideas becomes extraordinarily easy. If you begin to use spiritual principles, however awkwardly, you will gradually experience spiritual power inwardly. I can assure you that this will give you the greatest surge of happiness you have ever known. It will stay with you too, as long as you live a God-centered life. In my travels about the country, I have been encountering an increasing number of genuinely happy individuals. These are persons who have been practicing the techniques described in this book, and which I have presented in other volumes, and in other writings and talks, and which other writers and speakers have likewise been giving to receptive people. It is astonishing how people can become inoculated with happiness through an inner experience of spiritual change. People of all types everywhere are having this experience today. In fact, it has become one of the most popular phenomena of our times, and if it continues to develop and expand, the person who has not had a spiritual experience will soon be considered old-fashioned and behind the times. Nowadays it is smart to be spiritually alive. It is old fogyism to be ignorant of that happiness-producing transformation which people everywhere are enjoying at this time. Recently, after finishing a lecture in a certain city, a big, strapping, fine-looking man came up to me. He slapped me on the shoulder with such force that it almost bowled me over. "Doctor," he said in a booming voice, "how about coming out with the gang? We are having a big party at the Smith's house, and we would like you to come along. It's going to be a whale of a shindig, and you ought to get in on it." So ran his racy invitation. Well, obviously this didn't sound like a proper party for a preacher, and I was hesitant. I was afraid I might cramp everyone's style, so I began to make excuses. "Oh, forget it," my friend told me. "Don't you worry, this is your kind of party. You will be surprised. Come on along. You will get the kick of your life out of it." So I yielded and went along with my buoyant and racy friend, and he was certainly one of the most infectious personalities I had encountered in quite a while. Soon we came to a big house set back among trees with a wide, sweeping driveway up to the front door. From the noise issuing from the open windows there was no question but that quite a party was in progress, and I wondered what I was getting myself into. My host, with a great shout, dragged me into the room, and we had quite a handshaking time, and he introduced me to a large group of gay and exuberant people. They were a happy, joyous lot of folk. I looked around for a bar, but there wasn't any. All that was being served was coffee, fruit juice, ginger ale, sandwiches, and ice cream, but there was lots of those. "These people must have stopped somewhere before coming here," I remarked to my friend. He was shocked, and said, "Stopped somewhere? Why, you don't understand. These people have got the spirit all right, but not the kind of spirit you are thinking about." "I'm surprised at you," he said. "Don't you realize what makes this crowd so happy? They have been renewed spiritually. They have got something. They have been set free from themselves. They have found God as a living, vital, honest-to-goodness reality. Yes," he said, "they have got spirit all right, but it isn't the kind that you get out of a bottle. They have got spirit in their hearts." Then I saw what he meant. This wasn't a crowd of sad-faced, stodgy people. They were the leaders of that town, businessmen, lawyers, doctors, teachers, society people, and a lot of simpler folk besides, and they were having a wonderful time at this party talking about God, and they were doing it in the most natural manner imaginable. They were telling one another about the changes that had occurred in their lives through revitalized spiritual power. Those who have the naive notion that you can laugh and be gay when you are religious should have been in on that party. Well, I went away from that party with a Bible verse running through my mind. "In him was life, and the life was the light of men." Job 1:4. That was the light I saw on the faces of those happy people. An inner light was reflected outwardly on their faces, and it came from an effervescent spiritual something that they had taken into themselves. Life means vitality, and these people obviously were getting their vitality from God. They had found the power that creates happiness. This is no isolated incident. I venture the assertion that in your own community, if you will look around for them, you will find lots of people just like those described above. If you don't find them in your own hometown, come to the Marble Collegiate Church in New York City and you will find them by the score. But you can get the same spirit by reading this book, if you practice the simple principles set forth. As you read this book, believe what you read, because it is true. Then start working on the practical suggestions the book contains and you too will have the spiritual experience that produces this quality of happiness. I know this is so, because many of those to whom I have referred, and shall refer in later chapters, got their vital new life in the same way. Then, having been changed inwardly,